I'm Lucy.
And I'm Jennifer.
You're listening to Everything I Know About.
Each week, we share everything we know about a new topic, equipped with some internet research and a little too much exposure to pop culture. Hey, everyone. So today we have a little bit of a personal episode. This past weekend, I had my very first panic attack, baby's first panic attack. And I haven't even talked to Lucy about this yet. She doesn't know the full story, but I did tell her this week on the pod I wanted to dive into panic attack research, learn more about it. I did not know enough about panic attacks to the point that I didn't know I was having one, which made it so much worse. So I hope with this episode, not only will you get a juicy little story from yours truly, including a little mini involuntary grippy sock vacation. There's a lot of tea there. And you'll also get some more info on when to recognize a panic attack, what to do when you have one, and some of the biomechanical things that go on in your body when you are having one, which makes it a lot less scary when you understand what's happening to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super eager to chat about this with you because basically I was at a wedding last week and Jennifer texts me Monday morning. I'm thinking it's going to be like a normal work day. She texts me, FYI, yesterday I had a panic attack and I had to go to the hospital. So yeah, I hope you had a better Sunday than me. And I was like, dang girl, are you okay? And yeah, and we have not caught up since then because we've been processing.
Because I want to monetize my story and put it on a podcast, Lucy. That's why we haven't caught up.
I was like, what should we do for the topic this week? Thinking this would be like too personal for her to cover. And she was immediately like, while I was having my panic attack, I was like, wow, this is such great content for the podcast.
Literally, it was. So actually, it happened when I was on a plane, which is the worst possible. Yeah, I'm not afraid of flying at all. Like I've been flying like my entire life by myself, zero problems with flying. And I'm not claustrophobic and I've never had a panic attack before. So I'm sitting on a plane because I was in New York this past weekend for my friend's 30th birthday party. And so I was flying back home on Sunday morning and I had this kind of trippy thought. Someone was talking about fast fashion on TikTok when I was like scrolling while we were taxiing. How it's so quick and easy to get goods from China now because the world is so small. And I was like, damn, that would be like insane if you were claustrophobic and you felt like the world was small, like you literally couldn't escape. And then it felt like a firework went off in my brain. And I was like, oh my God, like I feel claustrophobic now. And I've never felt that way before. And I just like looked around the plane and I felt stuffy. I like ripped my headphones off. I actually like unbuttoned my pants too because I felt so stuffy. And I was like, okay, just calm down, just breathe. You're okay. And then I looked around and like the whole world didn't feel real. And I was like, what is going on? Nothing feels real right now. And I thought I was going crazy, which made me panic more. And I was like, I need to get off this plane. What if I'm in the air and this feeling doesn't go away? I like need to get off right now. And I'm somebody that hates making a fuss about things and like asking for things.
Yeah.
So for me to like get up and go to the flight attendant and be like, I need to get off the plane. That's how bad it was. The fact that I like, had to do that. The flight attendants were actually really sweet to me. And they're like, it's okay. It happens sometimes. I'm like, I've never been claustrophobic before. Like, I just need to get off. So they taxi around, let me off. And I'm trying to calm down. I call my mom and it
Wait, so
starts
you're in
coming
New York?
I'm in New York. Yeah. I was in LaGuardia. I'm by myself, by the way. So
yeah,
I call my mom when I get back from the gate and I'm like, I think I had a panic attack or something. I don't know. I felt claustrophobic all of a sudden and I like needed to get off the plane, but I was like starting to calm down. And then all of a sudden the world didn't feel real again. And I like looked around. I did not feel like I was in the gate. Like everything felt off. It made me panic so bad because I honestly felt like I was losing my mind. And I was like, am I going crazy? Am I going insane? And it made me freak out. And I'm like hyperventilating, crying my eyes out at this point. I could not for the life of me calm down. And so long story short, my mom was like, go to the person at the gate and ask them like if there's a medic or somebody that can help calm you down. And there wasn't. The only way I could see anybody was if I called an ambulance. But it was like so bad at this point that I was like, fuck it, just call the ambulance. Like, let's go. And I'm like, I don't even have health insurance right now. Like, I don't know what the fuck. I was like, this is so bad. My mom's like, don't worry about that. Just call him. So I do. The paramedics come after a while and we're going to get into this, but do not call an ambulance if you're having a panic attack. It will make it worse. And lo and behold, it did because they put you on a stretcher and like they have to strap you down on the stretcher. And all of that is just making you panic more because you're like, oh, this is really serious now.
Did you recognize this as an ambulance or you like weren't sure? Were you paranoid and did you think that they were going to like take you away and it wasn't actually an ambulance?
No. Okay, so this is interesting. Like the nothing feels real, fear of going crazy thing is it's not actually a psychosis, but you fear it is because you recognize what you're feeling is off. So like the distinction between what is called derealization during a panic attack, where like you feel like the world is not real, and then actual psychosis is that in psychosis, you can't differentiate. But in derealization, you're aware of what's real and what's not. It just feels off. And then that's what makes you panic. So no, I was very aware that like everything was real. And I was just like, this feels so weird. I'm like freaking out about this. So yeah, anyway, they strap you down on a fucking stretcher, which obviously feels very strange. And like, you're like, this actually does mean I'm crazy because I'm like strapped out in a fucking stretcher. And then I was in an ambulance on a tarmac. You're looking out backwards. So like, obviously like when you're in an ambulance, you're looking out the back. So you're driving backwards and it's just like concrete and planes. And I'm like, this is weird for anybody in a normal state. And then like you're in that state, you're like, I am fucking nuts.
I cannot believe this happened to you on a plane.
Oh my God. Horrifying. And then
you have the worst luck. This is when you're not even at home with your parents.
Trust me.
And then to be on a fucking plane.
Literally. That was the worst part though, because it was not like I could call like somebody to come pick me up from the airport. I was like, I'm not even in my hometown. Like I have nowhere to go. And I didn't want to be with one of my friends at that point either. Like you want to be with like family or like your partner or something, and that's it. So anyway, get to the hospital. 2 hours have passed at this point. So I'm calm by the time I get there. First of all, the person who gets me at Queen's Hospital, shout out to Queen's Hospital, you guys fucking suck. The guy intakes me and is like, yeah, this is the worst hospital ever. All of those surgeons suck. The doctors fucking suck. This place is awful. And I was like, you do realize I'm like a panic attack patient, right? And he was like, yeah, sorry. But I was like, wow, good thing I'm not having surgery today. And he's like, yeah, good thing.
Oh my God.
Oh. I could not believe that. But I see the doctor and it turns out he's a psych doctor. So he was like, honestly, you seem very well. You just had a panic attack. You're okay. And then he explained to me that the derealization I felt was a normal part of a panic attack, which made me feel so much better. I was still obviously shaken up. My whole body was shaking still from so much adrenaline. But he was like, you're just shaken up, but you're okay. I think it would cause you more anxiety to go back in the inpatient center than it would be just to go home. He actually wanted to talk to my mom, which was weird, but he like called her and told her that he didn't think I should be taken in and that they're going to discharge me. And my mom had already decided to fly out to New York so we could drive back together because I was like kind of terrified of flying at this point.
Yeah. Like if it would trigger it again, if it was like
exactly
some new plane related phobia. Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. So I travel a lot. Part of the panic too was that, oh my God, am I never going to be able to fly again?
Right.
And I was literally thinking mid panic attack, I was like, do I have to like take cruise ships if I want to go overseas? Like, what do I do now? I was freaking out. So anyway, my mom was on her way out and he was like, just wait till she gets here and then you'll be fine. But come in this back room so you can sign your discharge papers. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And he was like, well, leave all your stuff out here, including your phone, because you can't take it in that room. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, but I want to keep in touch with my mom. He's like, you'll be 5 minutes. Don't worry about it. Well, it turns out they were bringing me back there and didn't tell me that I was under psychiatric observation. And they kept me there against my will for 5 hours before I was able to get out. And I was literally in grippy sock mental institution for 5 hours.
Oh my God.
After the doctor told me that would just cause me more anxiety and I shouldn't be back there. So
he just straight up lied to you to like get you to go back there.
I don't think the doctor did. I think like the hospital fucked up. I think that's what happened. I'm not sure.
What? That's such a what?
It's so
like,
weird.
That's not okay.
No, because I don't know why he would tell my mom too, who has like no skin in the game. Like, yeah, she's fine. And he was literally like, you are totally okay. Like it would cause you more anxiety to go back there because like those people are actually unwell.
Yeah.
And
well, I thought he was acting. Like this whole thing was like a ruse to calm you down to like get you to willingly go. But no, it sounds like you still trust that he was well-intentioned.
I mean, I think he was. I hate to say this, but like the people back there are actually extremely unwell. So I think when he was looking at me versus the other people there, he's like, oh yeah, you do not need to be back there. And I like genuinely believe he thought that. But I feel like I have to become a mental hospital patient advocate at this point or something because the way that they treat people back there is bonkers. It is not okay. Like you have zero stimulation. There's one TV and it's set on FX the entire time and you can barely hear it. And aside from that, no windows, no natural light, no books, no magazines, nothing. Like you are just sitting there in basically darkness or horrible overhead light with nothing to do. They wouldn't let me bring my book out of my backpack just to entertain myself while I was waiting. Nothing.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
So you just like stared at a wall for 5 hours?
Literally. By the end, I was acting agitated.
That would make me go crazy.
Exactly. That's my point. It was just so bad. It was so stressful, so horrible. And then like no one responds to you when you talk to them because I think like they're so fed up with being around unwell people all the time that are like asking for things that like when I was like, hey, I'm sorry. I like don't think I'm supposed to be back here. I was discharged. Like I think this was a mistake. They fucking straight up ignored me for 5 hours until I finally got somebody to call my mother because they kept being like, well, your mom said she's picking you up and she wants you to wait back here. And my mom was like, that's not fucking true. That never happened. So finally I got them to call her and she was like yelling, screaming at them like, what the fuck are you doing? Like she's not supposed to be back there. finally they let me go. But I am my own legal guardian. My mom's not my legal guardian. So like it's completely illegal what they did. So yeah, I'm going to try to sue them. But yeah, that's my story.
Holy shit. Wait,
it was
oh my God, I have
Sunday.
so many questions about this.
Shoot,
wait, so
baby.
They were like, go into this room. And then when you went back there, it was like a huge space. Like there was already a ton of people kind of there.
It was this space with the TV in it in the psych ward. So I thought I was in a waiting room. I didn't quite realize I was in the psych ward. But then a girl walked into that room who like had the grippy socks and the gown on, and she was talking to herself. And I was like, oh, that's a patient. Interesting. And I like peek my head out and there's a bunch of patients.
Yeah.
And the door back to where I was in the evaluation room was locked and all my stuff was gone. And I was like, this is so weird. And then I realized what happened.
That would freak me out so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so scary. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Like, that's extremely traumatic.
You know what? It's actually, because I was kind of freaking out at the time. I was like, what the fuck? But I was like, you know what? We're going to settle into this. This is a good ass story. We're going to observe. Let's see what these people are up to. Like, when the hell else am I going to be in a psych ward? Let's see what's going on.
Oh my God. I feel like that's a marker of mental clarity and mental strength to be able to just like, after having had a panic attack and going through everything you'd already gone through, to then be in that situation where you're completely powerless, nobody's listening to you, you just are alone with your thoughts, and to be able to be like, this is okay, I can handle this. Because it was your first panic attack. So I'm sure that like flipped your world upside down.
Yeah, it was,
Dang.
It was definitely interesting. But hey, fantastic story now. Builds character. It's something that happened.
You know that game, Two Truths and a Lie? Now you can definitely use this. You can be like, I was locked up in a psych ward against my will.
Oh, I'm totally using that.
Oh, dang. Okay, so what was the aftermath? Like your mom came to New York and she picked you up, so you stayed at the hospital until she got there?
This is kind of a funny part. She actually didn't leave Nashville until like 10 p.m. She was supposed to leave at 2, so she was stuck there. Thank God they let me out because I would have had to stay overnight at that point until she came. But they did let me out. Thank God. My family is from New Jersey, so my aunt drove up to Queens and got me from the hospital, and I stayed with her that night. And then on the plane, when my mom was coming over, she dropped her phone in the plane toilet and flushed it on accident, so I couldn't get in touch with her. Would I tell you this because it's so weird? It's so weird. So then I was newly freaking out at night because I was like, what happened to my mother? Like,
right.
But that they were able to fish it out of the toilet bin for her. So that's a whole other fucking thing.
She flushed the phone and they were able to retrieve it still.
Yes.
And it worked.
Yes.
Oh, what? That is also blowing my mind. What?
Yeah, so I was like freaking out about that, but then she got her phone and came to my aunt's house. And well, this is actually great. So my fiance, Ruben, his parents, one's a neurobiologist and then one is a psychologist. And his dad did his PhD research in panic attacks. And his mom has worked for like 20 years with people who have panic disorder and panic attacks. So they were like giving him all of this advice and wanted to talk to me and like explain to me what went on. I was so lucky that that is the case, right? Like who has that kind of resources? They told him that one of the worst things I could do is not get on a plane right away because I'm going to build up a fear of getting back on a plane and it's going to exacerbate it. And then I might have a fear of flying. I just need to like nip it in the bud and see that it's going to be okay. So we were originally going to drive back because I was afraid of it happening again if I got on a plane. And they're like, it's not your environment that triggered it. It's something internal. So don't worry about your environment triggering it. And so I told my mom, I was like, I think we should fly back. And we did. And it was okay. So that's the end of the story is that I flew back. I'm okay. I talked to Ruben's parents extensively about panic attacks, did research, which we're going to share on the pod today. And yeah.
Oh
happy
my
ending.
God. Happy ending. Well, damn, what a crazy saga. I'm like so glad you're okay and you made it back.
Thank you.
And
me too.
I cannot believe you sent me such a normal text on Monday. I had no idea this was the extent of everything that happened.
That's why I think it's so important to talk about this type of derealized panic attack because nobody taught, like I had no idea this was a thing. Did you know this was a type of panic attack?
No, I didn't even realize there were different types of panic attacks.
Yeah, I didn't either. And like, that's what the research topic is for today. So I'm going to talk about the derealization, depersonalization panic attacks. But Lucy, you're going to cover cardiac and respiratory, correct?
Yeah. I personally have never had an experience with a panic attack. But when you texted me that, I like told Avery, my husband, and he was like, oh, I've had a panic attack. And I was like, you did? You never told me about this. This was like, I think college or something. And he was with some friends. They were going to a concert. He suddenly felt like he was going to die. Like his heart was beating really, really quickly. So he was like, I can't go to this concert. So they skipped the concert. They like walked to an emergency room and just sat outside for 2 hours until he felt okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So he didn't go inside?
He didn't go in.
Good.
I think for him, he was like, I just need to be near a hospital in case I'm actually dying. Like if I'm actually having a heart attack, then I'm like close to something. Yeah. The one where you feel like you're dying seems to be more commonly discussed, at least. Like I wasn't aware of this derealization. Yeah, I mean, that sounds honestly, actually, I don't know. I guess I can't say what is scarier. I guess probably feeling like you're going to die is also pretty scary. So I don't know.
No, I feel bad because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, I would rather feel like I'm dying than feel like I'm going crazy. Because like the thought when you feel like you're going crazy is like, oh, I'm going to have to kill myself because I can't live like this. So it's like you kind of have both.
My God.
Like, That's literally what I was thinking. I'm like, oh, well, I'm a goner either way.
Yeah. I mean, from what I found, and it would be interesting to hear your reactions to this, because obviously I didn't experience this. I just found this through research. But the physical symptoms of both of these types of panic attacks are almost the exact same. In both, you still feel your heart rate increase. You feel like you can't get enough air. You feel the adrenaline because it's essentially your body is kicking into like fight or flight. And then your type that you experienced is, I've heard it referenced as like freeze, where it feels like you can't move. Like if somebody were to wave a hand in front of you, like you wouldn't be able to react.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me what you found, I guess. Because like the terms that you're using, like derealization, depersonalization, what do those actually mean?
Yeah, great question. So derealization is feeling detached from your surroundings and like your surroundings are not real. And it feels like a break with reality, which then makes you feel like you're going crazy. It's akin to, oh, this must be what psychosis feels like, but you don't actually, so if you've never experienced that, you're like, you don't know that it is, right? A common thing is that people who've experienced it can't explain it to people who have not. And so it's very difficult to describe. And like all of the descriptions that I've come up with or that I've seen don't quite do it justice. But to give you an idea, it's often described as looking at the world through a pane of glass, or like there's a veil across the world, or like the world is a little bit cartoonish, or like you're in a video game. I kind of liken it to like, imagine that you knew you were in a simulation. And like what the world would look like and feel like if you knew that everything around you was actually just a simulation. Like that's kind of what it felt like. And then depersonalization is detachment from self. So it's when you don't feel real. And these can happen in conjunction with each other, or it can just be one or the other. I luckily did not experience depersonalization, but depersonalization, like you feel like you can't control your own movements, or like you look at your hand and you have to consciously think about moving your fingers, for instance. You feel like, oh, I'm actually like a simulation of some sort instead of your surroundings being so.
Got it. Okay, I wonder if that's where that like freeze symptom maybe comes from, the latter, like depersonalization, if you feel like you can't control your own body or interact with the world.
Yeah. Fascinating. These symptoms are things that people, from what I've read, don't talk about as much because they make you sound crazy when you talk about them. And then that's the primary fear that it triggers. So people will instead say like, oh, my heart was racing, or like all of the other physical symptoms, and not want to talk about the psychological ones.
Yeah, that's super interesting. If that was happening to me, I don't know how I would even identify that I was having a panic attack.
Truthfully, I didn't know if I was. I just said that because it was the least crazy thing that I could think of to explain what was happening so I could get help. I was like, I think I'm having a panic attack. But inside I was like, nah, bitch, you're not. You're about to go into psychosis. So that's why I know I've said this 100 times already, but like, I do think it's so important to talk about this because had I known that this was normal and that this was actually just a panic attack symptom, it would have shortened it to maybe a 10-minute panic attack instead of a 2-hour one. Or I would have maybe just done some breathing exercises instead of freaking myself out to the point that I went to a hospital.
It's interesting because like that's what they say to do. The most important thing if you're experiencing a panic attack to get out of it is to realize it's a panic attack and like try to breathe deeply and try to like be aware. But then if nobody knows, it feels like it's doing a huge disservice. I wonder how many people have had situations similar to yours or even potentially worse, you know, where they like didn't have an advocate or didn't have resources and were just stuck somewhere indefinitely, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. This is actually a funny story. One of the security guards at the psych ward, I was dressed in normal clothes. So he was confused that I was a patient at first, but he just saw me waiting around and he was like, you've been waiting here a long time, like really patiently. What's going on with you? And I was like, oh, I think I'm here by accident. Like I just had a panic attack and I'm fine. I'm just waiting to leave. He started laughing. He was like our age. And he just started laughing. He was like, yo, the same shit happened to me. I had a panic attack in the hospital and they put me back here. and I didn't get out for like a day.
God. Oh my God. No wonder their employees hate this hospital. Telling patients how bad it is. God.
Seriously. But I think he didn't realize what was happening to him at first too. And that's what freaked him out. And then I was looking into ways to mitigate it. And you're right. The best way is to realize what's happening and recognize it and then be able to de-escalate from there. The second psychological trick that you can use no matter what the type of panic attack is to let go of control, which is the scariest thing you can do, because essentially at the base of all of this is fear that you're losing control of some sort, like over your body, over your mind. And so if you concede to it and say, if I have a heart attack, I have a heart attack. If I stop breathing, I stop breathing. If I go crazy, I go crazy. It's okay. That'll actually lower your heart rate because the adrenaline in your body is metabolized within 2 to 3 minutes. So on a physiological level, your symptoms should go away by then, but it's the continuation of the panic that makes them stay. So if you just cede into the feeling, you will be okay within 5 minutes.
Wow, that's so interesting. And now that this has happened to you once, are you worried about it happening again?
Honestly, no, because I think if it happens again, I'm just going to be like, fine, if I go crazy, I go crazy. It's okay. Because I intellectually know now that I'm not going to. It will feel like it for a second, but I'll be okay.
And I'm curious, like when you talk to Ruben's parents, I mean, I'm sure you're wondering like what triggered this, especially because they seem to know right away, like it was definitely not the plane, which I don't know how they would have known that, right? I feel like, yes, of course, it could be something going on inside you, but it could also be like a situational thing. The research on this is pretty murky. People don't really know what causes panic attacks. So I'm curious from the experts, what was their take?
Yeah.
Were they able to give you any clarity on that?
Yeah, I mean, they're so brilliant. It's insane. So his mom was like, you likely have been stuffing down feelings for a long time and not letting yourself deal with it. So when you do that, your feelings live in your stomach. And then you tend not to take really deep breaths because your stomach is like full, so to speak. So you take really shallow breaths, and then that's obviously going to lead to the lack of oxygen, which can lead to a panic attack under the right circumstances. So if you've been doing that for a long time and you have a trigger, like yours was on the plane, that's what happens. So like, okay, now let's look into the trigger part. You're not afraid of flying. I don't have claustrophobia. So it's not the plane itself. What was it? And she was like, do you have like a situation that you feel stifled in or feel like you're trapped in some way or like fearful of being trapped in? Like, probably, yeah, I should probably go to therapy and talk about that. And she's like, okay, well, on a subconscious psychological level, it's your surroundings that reflected your internal world. And then that was the thing that like tripped you over in conjunction with already breathing shallowly all the time, etc.
Okay. Wow. That's also hard to hear. That's like if someone told me that, I'd be like, oh my God, I feel like you weren't aware. Or maybe you were. I don't know. Did you feel particularly stressed out like the week before?
No, I was totally. I mean,
I know we've been interacting. You've been
well, I mean,
totally
just before we started recording, I was at therapy and continued going for however long need be. I didn't realize that I was doing the stuffing down thing because I'm just like, okay, I'm laser focused on some goals we have right now, and like I'm just going to do that and like ignore everything else. And then the way Ruben's mom described it, it's like your body knocking on your door, being like, okay, pay attention to your emotions now because you've been ignoring me for so long. And so you just have to look at the panic attack as like your body, knocking on your door.
Yeah, I mean, start of life. I mean, so for our audience who hasn't listened to, I don't know, or many other episodes where we talk about this, Jennifer and I were building a company together right now, which of course is like very, very stressful. And we've been going really hard now for almost 4 or 5 months. And I've taken a vacation, but you have not. So
I have not.
I guess you just took a mandatory one from your body.
So not very relaxing one, but no. And that's the weird thing. It's like, I don't even want to take one because I'm so excited to get out what we're building that I'm like, I want to work on it. That's why it was so strange to me. I think I even texted you like in my original text, it has nothing to do with the business or like, I don't even know what caused it. I generally haven't been feeling like overly stressed or anything.
And I'm curious if you found anything about what causes somebody to have one type of panic attack or the other. Is it just chance, or are certain people more prone to like the fear of death one, and then others are more prone to like derealization, depersonalization? If stress, which I've seen this too, like can be definitely a major trigger for panic attacks. How does your body, I guess, figure out which one to have, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. From what I've seen, the dissociative panic attacks are considered more severe, strangely, on like a psychological level. They're correlated more highly with childhood trauma or like PTSD or a traumatic event, which is also correlated with that freeze response. I mean, for total transparency, I have not had any traumatic events in my life. Like I had a great childhood, so I don't really identify with that. So I'm not sure in general why somebody who isn't a soldier back from war would have this sort of dissociative panic attack, but that tends to be the correlation. But I do know that panic attacks, they are different from panic disorder, because panic disorder is when you have the fear of panic attacks all the time. It's like ever present, where panic attacks can be like an isolated event, but they are correlated with other psychiatric disorders often. Did you find anything related to that?
Yeah. So a lot of the studies that I looked at, okay, so obviously you're right, like panic attack, panic disorder, these are kind of two different things. Somebody could have a one-off panic attack, but they don't have a panic disorder unless they're having panic attacks more regularly. And so the studies that I found were looking at panic disorder. So like something where it's more severe than a one-time experience, like it's happening to you more in your life. It is correlated with depression. So depression can be a trigger for panic attacks, or panic attacks can actually trigger depression, interestingly enough. And so there's been a couple studies on comorbidity, which just means when you have two or more disorders that coexist at the same time. I'll link them in our sources that we always post on Patreon, but they found that the majority of individuals who experience a panic attack will also have an episode of major depression during their lifetime. The likelihood of this co-occurrence is even stronger with those who meet the full criteria for panic disorder. So that was like the headline. I was like, that's pretty scary. Like, what does that actually mean? So I actually like looked into the sources of this article to like look at how they were drawing that conclusion. And actually, like if you look at the details, it's a bit more reasonable. The studies say that like, a primary panic attack is a marker, but it's not causing depression. So it's just when they like look at the data of people who report symptoms, it does seem like if you had one, then that can be a marker for future depression, but it's not triggering someone to go into depression. It probably means that whatever is underlying the panic attack, if they're not dealing with it, it could also be a cause for depression, right? And so therefore they experienced both of those things. Primary depression, in comparison, appears to be a genuine risk factor for secondary panic attacks. So basically, like, depression can cause panic attacks, according to the studies they have so far. Panic attacks do precede depression, but they have not identified causality.
Okay, that's really interesting. Is there like a biomechanism for that, or like, do they have theories on why that is?
Yeah, well, so panic attacks happen because your body is essentially sent into fight or flight mode, which is not actually a bad thing if there is an occasion to be in fight or flight mode, right? Like if there is a bear chasing after you or you're actually in a scary situation, like you want the adrenaline because in addition to like all of the scary feelings that you experience when you're just like sitting and you don't understand why it's happening, in a stressful, scary situation where you really do need to run or fight, those are good things, right? The reason that our body makes the heart beat faster is so that you can actually get more blood to your muscles, right? Your body will actually cut off blood to your fingers and toes, which is why sometimes people feel tingling because those are extremities. They save it for your main organs and like your big muscles so you can like run, like they'll send it to your quads.
Oh
so
my
you can run away.
gosh. Crazy.
Yeah. The reason the shallow breathing too is because your body's trying to actually get more oxygen. It's sending all these signals that you should breathe more. Your pupils are dilating. Your mind is becoming laser focused. And it's like all of that effects of adrenaline, right? We see this with endurance athletes. I feel like when they describe they're suddenly like kicked into gear and they can reach this whole other level. And so the big question is like, okay, everybody's body will go into this in a fight or flight situation. But how come for some people it happens randomly without an actual scary situation being presented to them? And that's the part that's less understood, but there have been studies that have found like, okay, perhaps there could be some underlying things in somebody's brain that might make them more prone to a panic attack. And I feel like a lot of these things are also linked to depression. There's 3 potential areas in our brain that are linked to hormonal responses that happen naturally in our body, right? So the first is the amygdala, which handles our brain's response to stress, fear, and anxiety. And a study by Etkin and Wagner in 2007 found that individuals with heightened anxiety exhibited increased activity in the amygdala in general. And during a panic attack, it's basically believed that the amygdala becomes hyperactive, overproducing fear and anxiety, despite there being no tangible threat. And then that increased activity can trigger the release of stress hormones and like the cascading fight or flight response after that. So that's like one idea is perhaps you just have an overactive amygdala. Another talks about neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, and the GABA neurotransmitters. They are all playing a role in panic attacks. A study in 2017 suggested that individuals with panic disorder often have decreased serotonin and GABA activity and increased norepinephrine. And that's again, could just be in your body. So maybe that makes you more prone. And then the last one has to do with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Like these are the glands inside your brain near the hypothalamus that govern your body's response to stress. And that is what stimulates the production of cortisol. And it functions as a feedback loop typically. So like, let's say you're in a stressful situation, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, they're going to release cortisol. And then your body will have enough cortisol. So it'll send a feedback loop that's like, okay, we're good, like stop producing. But for some people, that feedback loop is broken. So actually, your cortisol levels are rising, but nothing is telling your HPA axis to stop. So it's just producing more and more. And again, that can like get you into this cycle. I have seen all the advice that's like, okay, well, you just have to like breathe and know you're having a panic attack. But then at the same time, it's like these things that you can't control that are happening in your body, like literally making you feel a certain way. So it feels like really tough, you know? And again, a lot of this stuff is like specifically for panic disorder, right? Or like people who've experienced this multiple times rather than like a one-off occasion. But yeah, it could be that genetics or changes in brain function play a role in addition to just like maybe stress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to offer a optimistic view of this because I think it is kind of scary when you hear like panic disorder or like maybe your brain is broken on some level and your circuitry is not working. Panic disorder is something that can be alleviated with breathing, honestly, which is strange. Letting go of the fear of the panic, which is often a huge, if not the trigger of panic disorder. It's like you are fearing the panic attack so much that you are in a constant state of fear and everything's triggering you. So if you let go of the fear, you can alleviate panic disorder, like the vast majority of the symptoms. Ruben's father, who did a bunch of research on panic attacks, he told me that he did a research study where they actually triggered and then alleviated panic attacks by changing the level of oxygen in the blood. So they would, yeah, he said they had a lot of questions from the ethics committee about that one.
Interesting.
But they would have patients. Essentially, the balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood is essential for keeping calm. And if oxygen is too low, so when you're shallow breathing, or when oxygen is too high, you're hyperventilating, it disrupts that balance and sends you into a panic attack. And they were able to mechanically get it back to baseline and the symptoms disappeared. So that is actually really optimistic news, I think, for anybody who's fearful of having a panic attack or has had one. Truly, breathing is the way to get out of it. And like you can be in control on some level. And that's not to say that like it's your fault for having a panic attack or having a panic disorder. Of course not. But you have tools to fight back that are just within you. And that actually makes me feel so much better and like alleviates so much fear and anxiety that I think I would have otherwise had. Because you're right, like you don't know when it's happening or like you do think like, oh, is something wrong with me? Is something broken? But I love the idea that like, okay, truly just breathing, activating that parasympathetic nervous system via your breath literally alleviates it in a lab.
Yeah. Also, like it's actually very common too. Like I was surprised to find that in the US, at least 1 in 10 Americans has experienced a panic attack in any given year. Yeah. 1 in 10. Yeah. So
it's so funny.
Like that's the same number of people who get the flu.
As soon as I got it, and like the few people that I've told that it happened to me too, they're like, oh, me too. That's happened to me too. And I'm like, what? Everyone has just had one? I don't know. Do we just not talk about it? It's so crazy.
I imagine it's also like that number 1 in 10. I imagine it's to different degrees, right?
Yeah, true.
Like the average panic attack lasts 5 to 10 minutes, which that's maybe somehow you were able to like start deep breathing and like get yourself out of it. But I do think your experience, the 2 hours, you really went through something and you like made it out. Not as simple as like, okay, 5 minutes of freaking out. It's like 2 hours of freaking out plus 5 hours of being locked in a psych ward. So yeah, it's still a good story. It's not like, oh, everyone has experienced that.
I completed like the black diamond of panic attacks. That's such a high number. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it does happen more to women than men too.
Really?
So, I mean, the same is true of depression. Depression is about 50% more common amongst women than men. But for panic disorder, it's 2.5 times more common in females. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's so much more.
Yeah. I mean, they don't really quite understand why, but I saw a study that was like, oh, in men, the way that they're socialized to be like masculine actually protects them. Because it makes them like downplay their feelings, right? Recognizing that like, okay, even though this is happening, I'm just like not going to freak out about it. And like men just suppress their emotions in general based in the US, right? Based on the way that they're socialized. So that could be helping them actually be less prone to this.
That is so insane. And that's so funny that you say that because all of the advice, I've listened to like many podcasts at this point too with experts in helping people get over anxiety. And half of them are men, strangely, which I found interesting. but they're like hard asses. It's not compassionate, like, I understand, kind of like you get from like the depression, mental health crowd. They're like, no, it's anxiety. You're just scared. Get over it.
Right.
They're like, especially with the derealization one, they're like, you think you're special because you have a fear of being crazy and not of dying. You're like, oh, those people who fear dying, like, I would rather have that. That's easy. Well, no, your fear isn't any more special than their fear is. Get over it.
Oh my God.
Like, oh my God. But then it's such a masculine way of dealing with it. But strangely, it is kind of comforting. You're like, yeah, no big deal. No big deal.
That's so funny. Yeah. Avery, when he works out and like when he's trying to get hype for things, he like listens to these, I don't know, like podcasts that are just like people yelling. It's like yelling at the listener, like, you're not good enough. Get up, sweat, work out. And I'm like, why do you enjoy this? It's like so different than women.
It's like the David Goggins school of thought.
Yes. Literally, he listens to David Goggins.
Of course. So I ran a half marathon without training for it once, and it was terrible. But I listened to David Goggins while I was on that half marathon, and I was like, shit, if Goggins could run 50 miles, like I can get over this 13. And you just like hear this guy being like, don't be a little bitch the whole time. And I was like, okay. I did finish my half marathon though.
Yeah, so I guess it works. I guess it works even for women.
On some level. Well,
where does this leave us?
Honestly, I feel so much more hopeful knowing what went on and like, again, that you can breathe and have tools that are very easily developed to deal with this. And I think it's just so important to talk about the experiences that you have so you can recognize when you're having one and other people can know like, okay, this is a panic attack. This is what I do about it. I think even that mediation step of when you have one and you just need to breathe it out isn't even talked about enough, or like why that works. Like intellectualizing all of it makes it so much less like in your body and more in your mind in a positive way, and being able to like logically think it out. So I hope for anybody that either didn't know they had a panic attack, if they had this kind of experience, now you have some idea if you do experience this, what is going on, and you can hopefully not have a 2-hour-long cycle that lands you in the psych ward like yours truly.
Yeah, if you're experiencing a panic attack, just think about this episode of the pod, Jennifer's wisdom, and just have her, just plug in your headphones and she'll talk you through it.
Get over it, breathe. That's all you need. You're fine. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye. If you enjoy the pod, we would love for you to give us a follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts, which helps us get the word out and reach new listeners. Full transcripts and show notes are available on Patreon, where if you choose to become a patron, you'll also get access to bonus content, our monthly book club, and our eternal gratitude.
If you'd like to get in touch or suggest a topic for a future episode, email us at everythingiknowaboutpod@gmail.com or DM us across all socials at EikaPod, that's EIKA pod. Thanks for listening and see you next week.